I'm going to go ahead and get us started today. And I want to thank you all first and foremost for joining this trailer talk. Our team always really gets to enjoy doing these. We get lots of engagement, lots of good questions, and we love the opportunity for y'all to speak with each other. So again, thank you for joining. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, so bear with me. And we are going to jump right into things today. So again, our topic for this month's trailer talk is the weekly commitments or the weekly work plan. That is the most detailed level of the Outbuild workflow. So we always work from the master schedule to the look ahead. Once we've established that, then we can really start working with the weekly work plan. I hope that some of you have been using it, and I also hope that some of you are completely unfamiliar with it. And our goal today is to help everybody have a broader understanding of the goal for that module, show you how to use it, show you kind of the bigger picture in the real world of construction, and allow you an opportunity to start trying it and learn more about it. So I'm going to go ahead and start moving through our slides here. And let me get us in full screen. Oops. Bear with me, guys. Here we go. All right. Perfect. So our agenda, as usual, we'll do a quick round of intros with here with us at the team. We're going to go through the presentation, and apologies for the typo there. It's going to be on weekly commitments, not tips and tricks. And then we'll move through our Q&A session and our Outbuild R&D, and then announce, when our next trailer talk will be. And so our goal is to always make this last 45 minutes. Probably going to move a little bit quickly through this presentation. I think there's going to be lots of questions, and I want to be sure that everybody has plenty of opportunities there. And then, as always, you're going to have a few options available to you during this webinar. So you will have the chat available as you've been using it with Brittany here. Be sure to be respectful of everybody that you're engaging with, but feel free to leave a comment, any questions there. But more specifically, you do have our Q&A area for those dedicated questions. That makes it really easy for us to see those questions listed out and make sure that they get answered. As you've noticed today, it's just going to be Brittany and myself. So if it takes us a few extra minutes to answer your questions, just bear with us. I'm going to do my best as I'm presenting to make sure to see those questions as they come in. And if I have an answer, I'll speak to it. If not, I'm going to allow Brittany over here to answer questions there. So again, appreciate you guys joining today. And then after this webinar, just know you have tons of learning resources available to you outside of this. So when you are in Outbuild, you always have us available in the web chat, but you can also go to our knowledge base where we have a ton of articles ranging from master schedule to look ahead to the weekly plan and how all of those work together. And I'm hoping today I'll be able to paint a broader picture for you of really what that workflow looks like, really what we're trying to achieve. All right. And so let's dive right in here. And so I've got a funny little image here for us, but I hope it helps kind of paint the image of what we're doing with the weekly commitment or the weekly work plan. And if you've ever sat in with the training on me, you've probably heard me preach heavily about roadblocks. Maybe you haven't heard me talk so much about reasons for variance. And so why I've got this particular picture is those reasons for variance. And that weekly work plan is the one opportunity where we really focus in looking back at our schedule. And so you'll learn more as we go through this presentation, but we're constantly looking ahead, adjusting our master schedule in the future, planning our look aheads in the future. When we get to the point where we make a weekly commitment and we work through that commitment, we are then able to take a look back and say, how well did I perform? Did I complete the tasks that we committed to? Did our team complete those tasks? And then if not, what were the reasons why not? Was it something we should have expected? Maybe it was poor planning on my part, right? Or maybe it was labor didn't show up. A material was defective. We failed an inspection. A piece of equipment failed. There's all kinds of variables that can come up even when your entire team is feeling prepared. And so I want you to think of the weekly work plan or the weekly commitment as that pulse for your project. And you can see I've got a graph here. And this is what we call PPC. That is the percent planned complete. That is tracked through your weekly work plan. And you can see it on a weekly basis go up and go down. And we're going to talk more in detail about that later, but I want you to see that as the pulse. And then our pie chart here is our reasons for variance. And so now I can see some of those larger pieces of pie might be labor. It might be RFIs. It might be design issues. And so it's going to allow me to get that broader picture of what is driving delays or unexpected delays in my schedule. And then, when we think of that weekly work plan, this is the line between planning and executing work. So just kind of on a philosophical level, at some point we have to stop planning and we have to put boots on the ground and execute that work. And so it allows us to track that. It's also that final opportunity for anybody on your team in that weekly meeting to speak up and say, hey, I don't have the material. I don't have enough space to work. I don't have the safety. I don't have whatever it might be. It's that final opportunity for somebody to speak up. And then it also creates a really great cadence and helps build momentum on your project. And so what I mean by that is it almost forces you to, well, and it truly does actually, is to have that weekly meeting and to set that expectation with your entire team of this is that this weekly meeting, you're going to be able to speak up every time. It's not a month. It doesn't allow 4 weeks to go by and you forget everything that went wrong. It's probably still on the top of your mind of maybe what didn't go well last week and what do we need to prepare for in this next week. And then it should always include all of your trade partners and your field team members that have work coming up at least in the next week, if not the next 3 to 4 weeks. So then that again raises the question of why we create a weekly commitment. And so again, it allows us to track that PPC. And that PPC is the percent planned complete. And so if I plan to complete 10 tasks next week and I complete 8 of them, it gives me an 80%. If I complete 10 of those, it gives me 100%. And I want to allow people who are in the chats to tell me why 100% might actually be not the best score for us when it comes to our PPC. And I'll give it a few moments there, but it's kind of an interesting take. If we are completing every single task that we plan to next week, what does that highlight for us? Exactly. So the answer here is you should always push to complete more than you can. And so we would actually want to be falling short of that. If I'm hitting 70, 80, 90%, I know that I'm planning well. I'm giving my team enough work to do, but there are, those variables that you just cannot plan for. Now, if it's falling down to 20 and 30%, okay, we need to figure out what's going on there as well. Here's a good question from Laura. What about when you have a 3-day task that starts on a Friday and ends on Tuesday? We'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide of how to create a weekly commitment, but that weekly commitment is the 7-day period that you decide. So if you are committing from Monday to Sunday, then it only includes that Friday. If you are committing from Thursday to Wednesday, then it would track that whole task. And so again, it is just tracking how well you performed within that 7-day time period. And I think on our next slide, I'll help visualize that for you a little bit better. And then I have a famous quote from Michael Wong, who is typically with us on these calls. But show me how I'm measured, and I'll show you how I perform. And so what I mean by that is if you set this expectation that at our weekly foreman meeting or our weekly meeting on the project, when you can verbally commit a task to me, so as the plumber, the electrician, I show you that look ahead, you see the next 7 days and you verbally say, yep, I've got that. I will complete that work for you as planned. It starts creating that accountability. And so now they start to see, okay, what I say matters. And they will see that week after week after week. And if they start falling short on those commitments, yeah, you need to have a conversation, but I bet they self-correct because they're going to be sitting there with the rest of their project team and they're going to be completing their tasks on time. So it's not a gotcha moment. It's not a blame you type moment. It's just an opportunity for everybody to know how they're being measured. And I'm being measured every 7 days on, am I keeping my commitments? And so it helps build that accountability. It creates consistency. Again, we're doing this every week. There's never any question of, are we having a weekly meeting? Are we committing to work? It helps strengthen that collaboration because now, because I'm being held accountable, I speak up and I say, hey, I would love to complete that overhead work next Wednesday, but the plumber's in my way. And it's, again, it allows that opportunity for me and the plumber to work together. And then it also raises those opportunities to learn of, okay, why didn't I complete that work last week? I thought I could, but you know what? I needed a crew of 3 instead of a crew of 2. That's on me. Next time I'm going to have a crew of 3. Any items like that. And it kind of keeps it top of mind with that cadence. Now let's move a little bit away from the philosophy of, if you will, of the weekly commitment and talk about how we actually do that within Outbuild. And so it all starts within the look ahead. And so if you've worked within the look ahead, if you've been building tasks, you've probably seen this bright green commit button. You've probably seen this blue column. And if you haven't been using the weekly commitments, you've probably thought, what in the heck is that? I don't know. It doesn't seem to be creating any issues for me, but I don't know what it does either. And so that is actually where we establish that weekly work plan. And so this blue column here, that's our planning period. And so you can see, and this kind of hopefully addresses Laura's question a little bit more clearly, is, my planning period starts on a Monday and I'm committing to all progress through Sunday. And then once I close out that week, it's going to bring in that next week and so on and so forth. And so what I can do is I can go into my project settings here. I can select my planning day and I can set it to start on a different day. And so what you'd like to keep in mind here is if you're having your weekly meeting on a Tuesday, you want to set that planning day to a Wednesday. So now when you're in that meeting, you are looking ahead and saying, okay, between tomorrow and our next meeting, what work are you committing to? And so then when you show up to that next meeting, you can have that most accurate progress because you're progressing it throughout the week in the look ahead. You're able to progress it within the weekly work plan and then able to address what we call reasons for variance. And we're tracking your percent plan complete. So a few things to keep in mind here is that weekly plan begins in your look ahead. That is where you make the adjustments to your tasks. The second piece is that you adjust your planning day to fall the day after your weekly meeting. And then to have a successful planning period or a weekly meeting, you want to be sure that all of your trade partners who have work in the next week are present at that meeting before you hit commit. And it's also critical that during that meeting, you get that verbal commitment from them. And a good question to ask is, do you have all the drawings you need? Do you have the labor? Do you have the material? Do you have the safety? And do you have the equipment? There's more questions to ask there, but if you ask those 5 and they actually think about them, you're probably going to see some success there. It's going to make them stop and think if you just ask those 5 questions. And then once you've gotten that verbal commitment, you simply hit the commit button. And what that does is brings that down one level down into your weekly work plan. And so if I go here, I apologize here. I do want to talk about how we would repeat this process over and over and over. So you've made that initial commitment, you have that weekly work plan. What you'd want to do is at that next foreman meeting, at that next weekly meeting, you start by opening up your weekly work plan. And if I've got it on our next slide here, I'll show it during our Q&A session. That weekly work plan is going to allow you to see what you committed to and allow you to progress it. And then from there, you're able to put in your reasons for variance. And so that's going to allow you to see, okay, I committed 100%, but we only got 90. I committed 25%, but we got 40. So you go down the line, you progress those items just like you would in the look ahead, but it's in the weekly plan. And then when you close that week, it's going to allow you to add a reason for variance. And again, those reasons for variance are those unexpected items that came up. It was when your labor was a no-show. It was, again, an equipment failure, an inspection failure. Maybe you were promised a change order would be approved at a certain time. It wasn't approved on time. An RFI wasn't answered. All of these different variables that maybe you had a different expectation. And then once you've closed out the week, it's time to go back into the look ahead. You take a look at what your actual progress was, and then you need to move those dates around. So if I committed 100% for a task and I only got 50%, well, then I know the end date for that task is going to move out. And so I move that end date. I resequence those other tasks that might be impacted by it. And that allows me to plan that next week, go around the room, ask those 5 questions, get those verbal commitments, and then commit that next work plan. I want to take a pause here. I know kind of talking high concept here. We are going to have a Q&A session. I am going to share my Outbuild screen, but what questions are coming up right now? Man, okay, I'm doing better than I thought. I'm going to keep going here, but if you have questions, if you're typing them out, feel free to take your time. We are going to have an opportunity here at the end to answer questions that are coming up. Also an opportunity to show this in action in Outbuild. So just be aware of that. And then last but not least, had to make one more kind of silly slide for us. It looks like we do have one question. Not sure what happened here. Great question here. Yeah, so the question was, do we close out the week before we can put in our reasons for variance? That's a yes. So you're confirming that, yep, we've put in our progress. It is accurate. I want to track my PPC. So you close out that week, and then you can add in those reasons. And we'll go over that in the live demo. And then you might ask yourself, where is all of this going, right? You might have seen the analytics page. Maybe it's blank for you. Maybe it's got a ton of information for you. But it really all comes down to that weekly work plan. Again, that is that final moment where we say, we have done all the planning that we possibly could. It's time to execute the work. And every time you commit and close a week, you repeat that cycle and you start automatically building these graphs for yourself. And so the first one that we like to track is the percent plan complete, or PPC. And that simply tracks, that's these blue bars here, how well you executed the work as planned. So again, if I committed to 10 tasks, we completed 8 of them as planned, that's an 80%, and that's actually a great number. Again, if we're under 50, we're having problems. If it's consistently at 100, we're sandbagging. We are not giving our guys enough work to do. So just be aware of that. And then we also track, unique to Outbuild, is the percent of roadblocks removed. And so that is, before committing a week, did you remove all of the roadblocks? And so if you're seeing, you know, a low PPC and a low PRR, then you know, hey, okay, maybe I've really got to focus on my roadblocks before I start committing this work, because it's ruining our whole plan. We have one expectation, and then our teams are finding something different in the field. And then really, I love reasons for variance. That is giving you a broader picture of what is happening on my project. What are all of the different reasons why we are failing or not meeting those expectations? And then, is it labor? Is it material? Is it equipment or RFIs? I worked with a team several months ago. They were doing this process very well. And when we opened up their analytics page, 50% of the reasons for variance was material. And they were able to recognize that not only was it a material issue, but it was their own issue. Their own self-perform teams weren't getting material on site for them in time. So they were able to address that and show this is having a massive impact on all of our work week by week by week. And so that was a really powerful tool for them. And that is what we're trying to establish, is if you do this on a weekly basis, it allows you to see a pattern. If you're maybe, you know, progressing a schedule once a month, that's 12 opportunities to recognize a pattern, and you're probably forgetting everything in between. If you're doing this every week for a year-long project, that's 52 opportunities to recognize a pattern. That's 52 opportunities to learn what is impacting our schedule, what is creating these unexpected delays. And so I really want you to think of it as a numbers game. You're given 52 opportunities instead of 12 on a year-long project. And then that's my sermon for today. I'm going to take a pause here, and I want to open it up to just a live Q&A. 52 is greater than 12. Thanks, Brittany. I'm going to open it up here where I'm going to pull up Outbuild itself, just so if we need to do kind of a live visualization or answer any questions there, we can. And you can see, you know, we've got our demo schedule here. You can see this column. This is our planning period that we spoke of earlier. Right now, you might notice that it's in this lime green color, and that's because it's already been committed. So before commitment, it's in blue. When I hit commit, it goes green. I can even preview all of the tasks that are going to be in my weekly work plan before I commit. I can also see what my current weekly work plan is by hitting that button. So those are all the tasks that I've committed to within this planning period. And then if I go one level down to my weekly work plan, I can see that in greater detail. And in our presentation, I did not have an image after this during the how-to, but this is what your weekly work plan will look like. So I can see all of the tasks I've committed, companies assigned, the amount of progress that has been committed, and then it allows me to come in here and simply input this progress. So if we actually got 80% on this, I can do that. And this is a two-way street. I can progress these items in the weekly plan. I can also progress them in the look ahead, and they feed back and forth to each other. So know that you've got that simplicity, especially if you're using the iPad app in the field, which is directly connected to our look ahead. And then we've got a great question here. Do we have to commit 100% for every task? The answer to that is no. So I'll show an example of electrical rough-in. You can see that we've got work for it on Thursday and Friday, and we've only committed to 40%. So we're committing to 40% of that entire task, because the other 60% of work is in the next planning period, but we can't commit to that yet because we haven't finished this week. we have to make sure that we get through this week, we get that progress input, and then we make those adjustments if needed. And then after you've input that progress, you close the week. I'm not going to do that here because this is our sales demo schedule and they're going to beat me up if I do. But if I close that week, I can put in my reasons for variance next to each of these tasks that have this red dash next to them. So that is where you start tracking that larger reasons for variance bit. And again, we input this progress. Once we've done that, we go back to our look ahead and we go back to the drawing board. We start planning for that next week. So had I closed out that weekly work plan, this planning period would move into next week. And if I only got 50% done in my ACT, then I'm going to need to readjust that. And I'm going to need to pull that out to maybe next Wednesday or next Thursday. And then here's another good question we've got coming up. and Brittany's got a really great answer for us. Anyone that has access to the look ahead has permission to edit progress. So anybody with full access to the look ahead can change any item. A project partner can only edit progress on their own task. So I can't be Joe the plumber and edit progress for Mike the electrician. I can only edit progress on my own tasks. We've got a great comment here from Sean who's talking about setting up different views within the look ahead. And so you can create a custom view and then decide to save it as a new view and make it public. And so what I could do here is call this MEP underground view or, interior one, rough in, give it all kinds of names here in the look ahead. And I can see we've got a great question here from Sean too. It looks like it might be a long one, so give me a minute here. Great question here, Sean. The concern that's coming up for Sean here is he's done a good job of getting his subcontractors or trying to get his subcontractors involved with his schedules and with his look aheads. And it seems that some of them are not receiving the email invite. So that could be due to a spam blocker on their end. That could be due to some other issue that is preventing them from receiving that email or seeing it. Please know that our team is currently working on a new process where you will be able to resend that link and see if they have activated their account. So full transparency there. We're doing some rework to the user management. You can't currently see if a user has activated their account or not, but our product team is working with that. We have a weekly meeting with them, and that is currently in development and should be coming out soon. So you'll have a little bit more transparency on what your users, if they're activating their account or if they've received the email. Any other questions coming up for the weekly work plan? There's kind of that bigger concept of, okay, how do I do this with my trade partners? And then the other question is, what am I doing this for? And it's allowing you to create that weekly historical record and again, identify those patterns. That way you can see, okay, I'm having issues with labor. Is it because we're under committing or is it because labor isn't showing up? It allows you to dive in just a little bit deeper than that. So just be aware, this can be a really powerful tool. And the teams that we've seen adopt it have really enjoyed it because now every Tuesday we're pulling up Outbuild. I'm inputting your progress. Be prepared. It's a really great way to keep everybody accountable. I'm going to give it another minute or two here. We're still going to demo the process. Yes, I can. Really simple here. I can't do it with this live account, but bear with me. I think it'll make it very clear. You have your look ahead built out. I can see what tasks are in this planning period. So they are all of the tasks that have a border around them. To really dive into that, if you want to see it more clearly, I hit preview. These are the tasks that I'm committing. And then I would simply hit this commit button that appears in the right corner. I can't do that right now because we're already in a committed week, but it is as simple as that. So I take a look at my tasks that are within this planning period. I hit commit. It commits these tasks to my plan. And then when I go to my weekly work plan, it will simply appear here with all of those tasks and the expected progress, and allow me to input that progress and close out the week. Sandor, does that hopefully answer your question? Great question on the variance piece. When you close out that week, that is actually done here. And so if I were to close this week and hit this button here, it would allow an opportunity here to input a reason for variance. Just a little button appears next to each of these tasks that did not meet their committed progress. Yeah, and so so the question from Rune here is, for people in the field, the weekly work plan access is only on Apple iOS or Android as well. So right now the weekly work plan is only accessible through the web-based app. So going to app.outbuild.com is where you can open up the weekly work plan. What you can do is, as you're working in the field in the look ahead, any progress you input is automatically going to progress in the weekly work plan. So again, the process would be is on that weekly basis is when you confirm that actual progress, you confirm it's accurate. And then if anything falls short, that's when you add in the reason for variance. And then in regards to the question of, there was a question here from Michael about having the foreman's meeting maybe on a Wednesday and then committing to work outside of that. It creates a little bit of redundancy there. So now we're having a meeting to commit to a week, and now we need to have another meeting to confirm progress and put in a reason for variance. So that's why you'd really want to align it with that weekly work plan, or that weekly commitment starts the day after your meeting, just to make this process run a little more efficiently. Any questions not coming up? Or any questions that we've missed here? I apologize.
That's all right. I think we answered everyone. I know we've both been answering.
Awesome. So we'll take the last few minutes here, and if any other questions come up, let us know. The last few minutes here, though, to talk about upcoming developments with Outbuild, and then we'll also share the link to our Outbuild community, which is where you'll be able to participate in our next poll for what our next subject will be in the trailer talks. Again, we do this once a month. We try to have it guided by you and the topics that interest you the most. And so we'll make sure that a link for that gets put into the chat here. And then let me go back to my presentation, and we'll talk about current kind of research and development with Outbuild and what we've been working on and what's coming up. So currently we are working on an updated critical path. This is going to take into consideration date constraints. So there are other softwares out there that allow the critical path to show a little bit differently based off the date constraints in the schedule. So we are updating our software to reflect that. And with that comes the ability to see early start, early finish, and late start and late finish columns. Where that becomes useful is that allows you to see what date a task will become critical. So now you have a little bit more insight into, okay, as my schedule changes, if there's a 3-day change, now this task is on my critical path and driving my end date. And so as that gets released, if you have any questions about it, you can talk with us in the help chats. We'll be sure to have a knowledge base article updated for it. But just know that's coming. And then those of you that are using the iPad app for the look ahead, you've noticed that currently all of those tasks can only be filtered by date. So similar to what was brought up earlier of setting up different views for different trade partners, you'll now have that opportunity to filter out that look ahead app a little bit more dynamically. So now I don't necessarily have to see the procurement items. I can focus on construction and I can focus just on my interior work. So you're going to have that ability to create new views in the iPad coming up soon. We've also heard our teams loud and clear looking for some more flexibility with the look ahead exportable. So if you've been using that, you've noticed that those columns are static, that there's some limitations to the number of weeks. We've been working closely with our product team to explore some options to improve that look ahead exportable so that it is a little more dynamic. You can have some more columns in there, maybe a few different formats. So just know that is coming. I can't share too much detail on it yet because they're still evaluating exactly how we're going to approach that. But we're super excited for that because we know how important that report is. And then we're going to be doing some more research into our Procore integration and allowing projects to be created automatically within Outbuild. So this will be an option to, when you created a project in Procore, it'll automatically bring it to Outbuild for you so that it kind of removes a little bit of that redundancy. And then there'll be future iterations of that allow some more customization of that. And then what we've completed recently, you might have noticed that we've added some search bars to the platform. You can do that in your project dashboard. You can use your projects drop down and your schedules drop down to search now. You do have the ability to hide a schedule. So this will hide a schedule from your project partners, your last planners, your owners. If you have a project with several iterations of your schedule, maybe some are a work in progress, some evaluating some different approaches to the work. If you're not ready to show those, you can click the 3 dots next to that schedule name and select to hide it so that it's only shown to your internal team. We've also added the ability to log in with Procore on the iPad app. And then again, we do have that schedule of schedules or that timeline view from your dashboard. And there will be some future iterations of that coming out that make it more flexible so that you can filter items, that you can sort, and really adjust that view to get a focused view on resources you have available in the field. And then I want to thank you all for your time. I know this was maybe a little more complex trailer talk, but I was really excited to share it with you. I hope that you saw that bigger picture of what we're really trying to establish. And I promise you, if you establish anything week by week by week, it is going to improve the performance on your project and keep everybody accountable. You now have a tool that allows you to track all of that information. If you get in there, if you get scared, if you get confused, hit that help chat. I promise you, our whole team is here to support you. And then our next trailer talk will be on August 28th. We will send out a poll in the community that Brittany shared in the chats so that you can vote on what that next trailer talk topic will be. And then any other questions before we wrap things up here today, folks? All right, well, that wraps up our call for today. I'll stick around here for another minute or two if anybody has any additional questions and they're just typing them out. But I really appreciate everybody sitting in on this one. I really enjoyed preparing it for you, really enjoyed hopefully opening your eyes a little bit to why that commitment button exists. So again, get in there, try it. It doesn't change your schedule. Try it and see what happens. You might be surprised at what you find out. So thanks again, guys. Have a wonderful day, and we will see you all again here in a month. Cheers.
Thanks, team. Bye.